Jorge Monteiro and Andre Baptista are co-founders of Ethiack. Ethiack, actually, yeah. And CEO and CTO, correspondingly. Yeah. And they will perform an ethical hacking demonstration. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us here. We are Ethiack, okay? Ethiack comes from ethical hacking, as you can see. So we do autonomous ethical hacking. I will explain you a little bit what is autonomous ethical hacking. Apart from the title of the title of the speaks being ethical hacking demonstration, we are going to show you some ethical hacking demonstration, but okay. But okay, awesome. Yeah. But to be honest, this is a project, and I wanted to tell you this, like the project that started some months ago. It was supposed to start sooner, but it's a ESA project from ESA, a technology broker in Portugal. So we are ethical hackers. Andre is an ethical hacker. We are in cybersecurity, but what we wanted to do with this project is to start understanding how can we use ethical hacking in space or for space systems or for companies that use space data or space system, okay? And that's what I'm going to talk with you is like what is the project that we are expecting to start, and we'll just started, and how can you get involved as well, okay? So from us, I'm a aerospace engineer by background. I was working with small satellites in the university and also with some companies with ESA. And then I moved to business development, and now I'm with Andre doing the ethical hacking. And Andre is an ethical hacker. I will let him present himself.
Everyone, it's good to be here. Yeah, so I'm a ethical hacker, and I've been working with companies worldwide, like the ones you see here from Department of Defense of the United States. I was actually hired by them to hack them before they actually get hacked. I'm also a university professor, University of Porto in Portugal, and I won multiple prizes in hacking competitions internationally. Yeah. Oh, you have a mic. Nice.
Yeah. Basically, like the idea is we know that cybersecurity is important. We know that cyber attacks are rising. We know all here that space is late to the party, right? But the idea is now that we have more systems to connect to the internet, that we have relying more cloud, relying more web applications, APIs, how can we really ethical hack? And the idea is the how can we like manage our all digital infrastructure that we really have right now, and what we have been understanding with our clients, not in the space system, is that most of the digital infrastructure that the enterprise has right now and that is exposed to the attackers is unknown. So more than 30% exposed assets, they don't even know that they are exposed, okay? And the biggest problem that we have been understanding is that testing is not enough. It's not enough and it's not good enough. So usually we do, what, 1 pen test per year? So 1 in 30 applications are tested per year, but we have, what, 70 CVEs being disclosed by day. So how can we really think that if we do a pen test every year, we are still protected? No, we need to do it continuously, right? And more than, and you say, okay, yeah, but we use scanners and all of that, right? But even scanners, what we are understanding is that scanners have like false positives that are more than 40% of false positives sometimes, right? And we have now a problem that is like vulnerability burnout, right? We have security analysts that they cannot handle how many vulnerabilities they cannot triage everything. So the idea of Ethiack, and this is what we do, is we combine artificial hacking with ethical hackers, okay? So we have a pool of ethical hackers that work with us, that as Andre, they have worked with a lot of companies, from Shopify, from Fortune 500, Ubers, like they usually do bug bounties and are working with us to ethical hack all our clients, and we want to understand how they can be used to space. And then we have an artificial hacker that is way more than a scanner. Basically, it mimics hacker behavior. So it tests different pathways, attack pathways, using machine learning techniques for that, and is continuously 24/7 testing what is exposed to the internet. And here, what we can do with this artificial hacker is like we can already drop to 1% of accuracy in vulnerability identification, okay? In terms of false positives, it's 1% right now, only with automatic and continuous security. And then our ethical hackers come in after the machine already did some hacking, and they really can focus on the creative and logical hacking, because to be honest, we don't want a pen test that is checklist. We don't want a pen test that is like top OWASP or CVE revealed, because that a machine can do already. Okay, so what we are trying to do now is like, how can we use these hackers, and how can we try to demonstrate that these hackers can also be helpful in space? Okay, and I know I'm not going to tell you this, like space is vulnerable. We know that we can do stuff in space, right? So let's basically try and find out. That's the project of ESA. And here we started to understanding, this was the beginning, how can we really protect space? You know this also. We have different segments that we can protect right now. From our version, okay, what we have right now in our artificial hacking, our machine, we can already help satellite data providers and help satellite and ground station operators. Why? Because if we are looking for new space, they are using cloud, they are using web apps, and they are using APIs for that. And our machine hacking already does a lot of hacking on that. So what we are here is telling you, we have funds for this, we have this project, we just want people and organizations that could be interested also in basically understanding how can we see what attack pathways and what vulnerabilities are in this part. And then we have V3, which is the communication link, and here of course it's more difficult. You need hardware, you need legal basis. We have some hackers that are like thinking about doing a hacking station that could like try to hack satellites. Of course this has a lot of challenges, and we are also trying to research a little bit on this, but for now it's a little bit more than research than demonstration, okay? And that's, I told you about this. Look, so the project is basically what we are doing now is we are trying to identify vulnerabilities in space tech. That is the most objective. And what we are doing now in the objectives of the project is first test current technology with space users. We are researching what services and technologies that space industry is using, and Andrea will talk about that we already did some research. We are researching hacking techniques, and we are developing specific hacking modules for these technologies that the new space is using, okay? And we are doing the research for the hacking station. Let's see how it goes, and what can we do right now with that, okay? And what basically my objective here was to exploit your curiosity and basically try to get some pilots as well. So we are offering, we have the funds for doing this. So if you want to basically let hackers see what they can do, we are open to do that and do some research with you, okay? So I will pass the ball to Andre, and we will tell you like what is the beginning of our research and what can we do further on in the journey.
All right, thank you, George, for the intro to the project. All right, so we are like in step 2/3 right now of this project. So we basically analyzed for the last couple of months organizations from the space industry, and this is basically the distribution of the attack surface size from these organizations. We analyzed most of them passively. This means that we didn't actually try to interact with these systems or these APIs or these services that are exposed, but we did some passive fingerprinting and reconnaissance techniques to understand how the attack surface of these organizations would look like. So we covered so far more than almost 4,000 hosts. This means like assets, like IPs, servers, and so on that are exposed basically in the internet. And basically the distribution was like this. So most of this industry has between 10 to 100 assets. This means like 100 subdomains, 100 servers that are being exposed. Can I get the clicker? Thank you. And in terms of services, we have certain distributions in our platform from other industries in general. But in terms of space, We have seen a little bit less of web applications and more services that would appear. So still, most services identified were basically web services, but also we noticed that there was an increase in terms of cPanel, for example. This means like that lots of companies are using shared hosting or cPanel to manage their hosts, and they are not actually using, let's say, modern cloud-based approaches to deploy their infrastructures. Also, we noticed that there was a big component of secure shell services, SSH, mostly because, and we talked with some customers that we have already and some users that are helping us. They mostly use SFTP to exchange files or to upload files and so on. And some also use FTP, which is basically unencrypted and secure by default. And then we have SMTP as well for custom email service, representing 1.4% of this. And also we got exposed LDAP instances, for example, MySQL instances. They are not, they are basically not being protected inside private segments through proper network segregation. In terms of web servers, we noticed that you see some firewalls here as well, like Akamai, Cloudflare, and so on. They are not very representative of the landscape because people are just using vanilla Apache or Nginx exposing versions and so on, which is basically informative. And there was 10% using Microsoft IaaS-based services instead of typical Linux servers. Also, we noticed that AWS was used a lot, mostly through buckets to store large files typically, and that's basically it in terms of the web servers. In terms of version, as I said, like we mostly didn't try to actually hack in an active way because we didn't get authorization in most of these users. Almost 30% of them exposed version information, and 33% were actually outdated and vulnerable to CVEs. So this means that we can conclude that, at least in this industry, we have almost 1/3 of basically network-based services that are outdated, and they are publicly accessible through reconnaissance, and they can be exploited easily by the real attackers. In terms of third parties, this is something where it gets more interesting. We have seen an increase in terms of VPNs in this industry. We see that in terms of third parties, almost 33% of the assets will represent a VPN or gateway servers to access private networks. And then we have seen a lot of Grafana's as well, which is kind of common in technology in general, and in other industries. Do we have a significant representation? We have seen from Jira to GitLab servers as well. Moodle was very interesting. Not sure why. Basically, mostly because education, I guess, for the new space. But we have seen some exposed Moodle instances that are outdated. They can also be exploited by attackers. Jira for ticketing, CMS, and so on. Drupal as a technology for web and so on. So one of these components that we noticed that they were basically being used by some companies were basically GitLab instances that were actually publicly exposed. So in our current user base, there was like 1 or 2 from 100 organizations that they were using GitLab, and the GitLab instance was publicly exposed. So for those that you don't know what GitLab is, it basically allows your developers to store code and collaborate and so on. It's like an interface for Git itself. And these instances have had multiple vulnerabilities in the past. This is a critical vulnerability on GitLab. It's a CVE found from a great friend of mine, Vax. So basically the GitLab instance as an endpoint, and this was an outdated instance in one of our users actually. Basically, the vulnerability would work by uploading an image. And to upload an image, basically most services online would strip out the metadata of the images for privacy reasons, to reduce size and so on, through a tool called EXIF tool. So the CVE would work by uploading an image, and the parser for a certain format named DJView for Perl would have an eval that will basically allow an attacker to inject arbitrary code into GitLab. This didn't affect only GitLab, but also a lot of other components in the wild. So basically, what we have in terms of technical demonstration was that we followed the top-down approach in our customers, and then we try to understand what we could do in terms of critical vulnerabilities. So in this specific vulnerability that would affect also some customers that we analyzed in a passive way, would be basically like this. In terms of the impact, I don't have any code in here, but this is basically a GitLab instance that we found it was vulnerable to the CVE, and basically what an attacker could do is that, in this case, trying to connect, I got a permission denied, I run the exploit for the CVE, I add my public key to the server, and then when I try to SSH to the server, I'm in as Git. And basically, what an attacker could do in this case is to steal all the IP from the target in terms of all the code, all the secrets that are being stored in this GitLab instance. So if any companies here are exposing GitLab instances, please put them behind your VPN and so on. That's a good measure, but also update, obviously, all your systems on a regular basis. At Ethiack, we update daily every single system, okay? So that's it from our preliminary results of our study. We hope to update you again when we move on through the project. Jorge.
Okay, thank you, Andre. So that's the idea. The idea is, what we want to do is find more vulnerabilities like this, okay? We are doing that with machine hacking and ethical hacking. And the idea of the product is simple. You see here, as you saw, like we report the vulnerabilities, we give you the steps to reproduce the vulnerability, we give you the impact, and we give how to mitigate this vulnerability, and we also do the attack surface. So we will tell you what is exposed, what servers, what technologies do you use, and if it's exposed, you should take a look on that and protect that. And basically is that. So the idea here was to, again, let you know that we are doing this. We are asking partners and people from space industry to join us and to see if we can help protect you. And if you are curious about what hackers can do, it's not easy to bring hackers to the space industry. I think I push them a lot because I am a space engineer by background. I have this curiosity. I tried. That's what we are trying to do. We are trying to basically understand what we can do more. And if you have that curiosity and you are free to do that, because it's not easy also to convince some aerospace industry people to let hackers be free, right? Please come to our booth and talk with us. We are going to start running the pilots this year from May to until July, final finish July. So the idea, what we will give you is like basically the opportunity to participate in research for the future of cybersecurity in space, access your security risk, and we'll tell you this for free, and get some knowledge from some of the best ethical hackers in the world, and identify vulnerabilities and map your digital infrastructure. We have some partners here already that are using this in a more active way, mostly satellite data providers such as OWL and Spotlight, and satellite operators such as CYSAT, and critical software. They also work a lot with defense sector, and CYSAT is connecting with you all. And that's the idea, okay? So 3 months of free. Sorry about the sales guy right here talking, but what we want really to do is, we are not selling you anything here. We are just trying for you to participate with us in some research, okay? So thank you so much for listening to us. Please come and join us, and talk with us. We are it's pretty good to talk with you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yep.
Thank you for the presentation. One question regarding the findings of your web service fingerprinting. So you said 33% of outdated versions of web services, but actually, do you have any more like analysis, or did you do any like in-depth analysis what are the actually exploitable versions? Because like a lot of Apache and other web services bugs are either local privacy or some DDoS or some obscure function that it's never really used in the configs, and the actual RCs are a few.
Yeah, we have all this data on our site. So basically, we noticed that we have, yes, some Nginx, some Apaches, and they have some versions that, in order to exploit it, it's actually theoretically impossible. But most of the services that we noticed that were outdated were like Grafana 7-ish, version 7, 6, the GitLab example, cPanels. Today, a good friend of mine just released a nice vulnerability on cPanels that represent 11% of this attack surface. So we have all this data. We just try to put everything together on this presentation. But if you are interested, we can show you like further data on this. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
And of course we cannot do an in-depth analysis because we need authorization.
Yep.
That's the thing with ethical hacking, right? So for us to do like even the amount that we did for passive recon is already a large amount, but it was only passive, because if we try to do that without authorization, we are going to jail, right, in Europe. So that's why we are trying to push you guys to authorize us to let and do more in-depth analysis. Maybe next year we will be presenting here some in-depth analysis.
Okay, thank you. Next question comes from Juicy Roberts. Is your intent only on finding vulnerabilities or also to build capability to autonomously exploit said vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so finding vulnerabilities or to exploit. Okay, yeah, Jesse, thanks for the question. So it's kind of a mix, actually. We find vulnerabilities for our customers, but in terms of automatically or autonomously exploiting these vulnerabilities, we have something that is a proof of vulnerability, POV. It's something that is like very internal and secret from our product, but the things like we try to actually prove that the vulnerability exists. So we don't say that, okay, there's this vulnerability from 2004 because there's certain heuristics that say so. No, we actually have models that would basically, we have our own heuristics to understand if the vulnerability exists. So we don't actually try to exploit in a bad way most of the times, at least on purpose. We have some mechanisms in place to avoid to make the corruption of data or lack of availability to almost, you know, like 0% chance of that happening. But we have, let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say that we have remote code execution. If we have remote code execution, we send a request to a server that we control with a given hash, and basically we can infer that actually the RC would exist with a 100% confidence level, basically. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, thank you. Next question comes from Barbara Ancelucci. Give me a sec. A pen test can impact a system while running. How can you manage the impact on operational systems using an automated ethical hacking system?
Want me to answer? All right. So I already talked in the previous question a bit about this, but basically, in terms of availability, what we do is that we have a change detection mechanism that would basically reduce significantly the amount of traffic that we need to generate to be continuously evaluating the services. So we evaluate the services that are from our users when two options. When a new vulnerability comes in the wild, or we develop a new model in our company, or if there's a change, could be a subtle change on your service. This means like a developer pushing new code to production. We can understand that as an outsider without any privileged knowledge, because the real attackers would be able to notice that as well. So we have schedulings in place that reduce, and some heuristics to reduce the probability of this happening. I can say that after you know, like almost 1 year, it happened once to a user of ours, but it was because they have this bad configuration on their firewall. Basically, if we would send a significant amount of requests, they'll block all the IP addresses in the internet. So it was a bad firewall rule that won't just block us, but will block everyone by precaution. So it was just you know like a stupid scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add, what I like to say about these answers is that we need to change the mentality, right? Like the mindset. So because basically, like what we are doing in autonomous ethical hacking, the automated part is black box. It's just what is exposed. It's just what we can see as an attacker. So do you really believe that they are not doing that already? Because maybe they are doing it already. And if we can do it, others can do it as well. So you need to be protected. Like we are not going to do anything more than maybe the criminals are doing it already. So what do you want to do? Do you want for us to be the ethical hackers find it, or do you want the criminals to find it before? That's an option, right?
Yeah, good point, George. That's exactly the game. When I spin up an instance, I just want to add that when I spin up an instance nowadays, I start receiving lots of requests. It happened probably to a lot of people in here that work mostly on infrastructures. You start receiving a lot of requests instantly because there's like a lot of analysis and bots analyzing the internet to get in and to exploit vulnerabilities. So we should do that first, like George was saying.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What kind of tests can you continuously perform with the automated AI system?
Yeah, Gabriel, thank you for your question. So we perform a wide range of testing from, you know, like, obviously we started by covering all the OS top 10 stuff, like, you know, traditional stuff, CVEs that we update on a regular basis, but also in terms of tests and specific services that we analyze, we do not focus only on web-based services like web pages or APIs or and so on. We are able to cover protocols like SIP, SSH, FTP, SMTP, and a wide range of other services that we have been having to our automated system. So this means that we can also find vulnerabilities there that could be typical, for instance, in SIP protocol, for example, which is one of the latest that we added for analysis, and that could result in you having phones ringing on your office all over. That actually happened to us already by accident. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add also here, and one thing that I forgot to mention when I talked about our solution is basically that what we are trying to do now is we are building modules almost every day with our ethical hackers, and we are trying to do now is, if an ethical hacker finds a vulnerability that the machine couldn't find, how can we learn with that, right? And we are trying to put in place steps for the ethical hacker to do that will allow us to integrate vision, to translate that in code, and create a new module and for security testing, almost autonomous. Okay, that will be the vision in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe with this question we can conclude. It's time for a coffee break, but I guess you are around and you have a booth, so if people have more questions, you can...
Thank you so much, guys. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.